everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we have another TBR, but this is my TBR of books that I want to reread. I really love rereading, but I haven't been rereading a lot recently just because there are so many new books that I'm excited about. But there are also a lot of books on my shelves that I read so long ago that I remember nothing about them. So it would practically be like reading them for the first time anyway. So I really want to reread some of these. I think all of these are the beginnings of series. So I'm not necessarily committing to rereading the entire series this year, but I would like to at least read the first book in the series to figure out if I want to continue rereading it. Because some of these also I just want to know, like, do I still even like this series? Because I read it when I was like 15, so I have no idea if my reading taste is even the same. I don't know. Yeah, so I have 6 books that I want to reread this year. The first 2 are both Juliet Marillier books because, of course, I have to talk about Juliet Marillier like any opportunity I have. And some of her books I have read so long ago that I remember nothing about them, because there are certain series by her that I reread more regularly, and then some that I just have read once and never reread. So first up, I have Fox Mask. This is actually the second book in the Light Isles duology. I read the first book, or reread the first book, Wolfskin, like 2 years ago or something, and then I meant to reread the second book and I just never got around to it. This isn't my favorite of Marillier's series, but I did enjoy, I enjoy her books to a certain degree no matter what. It's just like not my favorite one from her, which is why I haven't reread the series before. So I want to finish my reread of this duology and read this one. So this is a Viking inspired historical fantasy, and in this one we're following the children of some of the characters from the first book, which is something that Juliet Marillier does in a lot of her books, where she'll kind of have these intergenerational stories where we just follow the next generation or family members of characters from previous books. So yeah, we're following some of the children from some of the characters in the first book, and I think one of them is searching for their father, who was one of the main characters in the previous one, and then the other characters kind of go along on this journey to find this character's father who disappeared a long time ago. The other Marillier book that I have on this list to reread is The Dark Mirror, which is the first book in the Bridie Chronicles. So this is the first book in a trilogy. It's another historical fantasy, and in this we are following Bridie, who is a young nobleman who is being raised by a druid because they believe that he has some greater destiny. And when he's a child, he finds a baby girl on his doorstep, and I think the druid wants to kill the child because he believes that it will bring them bad luck, but Bridie insists on keeping the baby, and then the two of them kind of grow up together and then discover that she may actually be integral to his greater destiny. So this is one of the ones that I remember almost nothing about. I remember 2 scenes with 0 context. I think I remember the scene where he finds the baby, and then I remember a scene of somebody running in the 3rd book or something like that, but I have no context for it. So this will pretty much be like reading it for the first time again. But I do remember enjoying this series, although for some reason I have not reread it before. So I'll be interested to see what I think of it now. Then I have First Truth by Dawn Cook. This is the first book in a 4-book series, and Dawn Cook, I think, is a pen name for Kim Harrison, who writes urban fantasy with vampires, I think. So I've never read anything under the Kim Harrison pen name because I'm not really into vampires. But I have read the 2 series that she wrote under Dawn Cook, and I remember enjoying both of them. And in this, our main character's name is Alyssa, and they think that she may have magic, and so she is sent to the Hold, which is this place where the keepers live. So the keepers are these people who learn magic and teach magic, and then there are the masters who are very mysterious and also maybe teach the keepers how to use magic, or teach them deeper secrets of magic. It's unclear. But so she is sent to the hold, and along the way she meets this like traveling minstrel who she doesn't really trust, but he's also traveling to the hold, and so when they both get there, they find out that pretty much all of the keepers and the masters are gone except for one keeper who is left. And so they're trying to figure out what happened to the masters and the keepers that had been there before, and this keeper that is left, he might be suspicious, and he might actually be using Alyssa and her potential powers to reach his own ends. But yeah, so as I said, I remember enjoying this one, and I think that this has a more romance focus to it. I don't know, but I'm excited to give it another try. Then I have The Sharing Knife by Lois McMaster Bujold. The first book is called Beguilement. This is the beginning of another 4-book series. Plus I think there's also a novella that I actually haven't read the novella because it came out more recently. But Lois McMaster Bujold is an author that I have really enjoyed. I recently, I read this series a while ago, but I recently have read her World of the Five Gods trilogy and her Penric and Desdemona series of novellas. Those are all set in the same world. This is a different world, but I really enjoyed those books by her, and so I have been wanting to reread this series because I also really remember enjoying this one. So in this, we're following our main character Fawn, who has just recently left her village for the first time, and she's kind of striking out on her own under some not so great circumstances. And along the way, she gets caught by this magical creature called a malice that kind of like sucks the life out of you. And then she is saved by a lake walker. And the lake walkers are these nomadic people that nobody really knows much about them. They're kind of secretive about their practices, but people think that they are necromancers who use these like magical bone knives. And so she's saved by one of these lake walkers, but in the process of saving her, he accidentally kind of magically bonds them together. And so then she has to go with him as they travel back to his community and kind of to find out what happened and if there's a way for them to separate and like other things like that. So she kind of gets drawn into his world of the lake walkers and finding out more about the magic that they use. And yeah, I remember really loving this series. This one has definitely a more romance focus, I think, than the other series that I have read from her more recently, but I remember liking the romance in this, so excited for that. Next up is The Witches of Iilianne by Kate Forsyth. This is the beginning of a much longer series. It might be like 7 or 8 books, actually. I'm not really sure. But in this world, there used to be witches, but they have been outlawed and killed, and our main character is probably one of the last witches, and she has been raised in this like secluded valley and protected there. So she has no experience of the outside world, and she doesn't even realize that the witches have been killed in the past. But then of course some events happen that force her out of this secluded safe valley and into the world and into larger politics, and also really learning more about herself and her magic and her family and their past, and like her legacy in that way. And again, I remember enjoying this a lot. This is another one that I remember almost nothing about. I remember that there is a guy with wings. That's about it. But one of the things that also has made me want to reread this, other than the fact that I remember liking it, is that whenever I try to search for like nature fantasy books, a lot of times this comes up on recommendations lists for that. So I want to reread this to remember if this does have like nature fantasy. Maybe that's why I enjoyed it the first time I read it. I don't know. I remember so little about it. But yeah, I would love to rediscover a nature fantasy series. And last up, I have The Rune Lords by David Farland. And I think that this book has actually been renamed since I got it, because I think that this first book is now called The Sum of All Men, and the series as a whole is called The Rune Lords. But I got this edition a very long time ago, so I have the old name on it. But this series is another one that I think has nature magic, because the premise of this is that the earth is in pain and it has wounds that need to be healed, and it can only be healed by the Earth King. But the Earth King, I think, is this kind of mythical figure. They're waiting for the return of the Earth King to save this world, but in the meantime, I think there's also a tyrant who is trying to essentially take over the entire world. And I remember this series having a really interesting magic system, which involved giving attributes to other people. So the reason it's called Rune Lords is because they have this magic that is based on runes. So you can use these runes to transfer attributes from one person to another. So someone can give like their keen eyesight to somebody else, or their strength, and then the person who gave it no longer has that attribute, but the person who has it now has like doubly good eyesight or strength or something like that. And then people can, accumulate tons of these runes and attributes and become kind of superhuman. And so I think that's what the tyrant is kind of doing, is that he's accumulating these runes and become this almost superhuman figure trying to take over the world. But I just remember it being a really interesting magic system that created very interesting dynamics and problems in this world. So yeah, I remember really loving that about it. And this series I actually never finished, because I read up until what was out at the time, and then I thought the series was complete. I thought it had like finished, and then he kept writing more books after that, and I didn't realize that at the time. I was not as like savvy at finding out about books and book releases and things like that. So I didn't realize that there are actually maybe like 3 books at the end of the series that I never finished. So I would love to reread this, and if I do like this series again, I'd like to finish the series finally. So those are my top 6 books to reread in 2021. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!